Arbor Human Rights Commission. Let's start with introductions. Pam, would you begin?
Sure. Pam Dibb, Commissioner.
Jordan Jones, intern.
Linda Winkler, Commissioner.
Corrine Moore, Commissioner.
Leslie Stambaugh, Commissioner and Chair.
Julie Grand, Ward 3 Council Member.
Mohammed Al-Azun, Commissioner.
Dwight Wilson, Commissioner.
Vivian Chang, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Thank you. We're welcoming Julie as our liaison for the first time. Would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Sure, thank you. So I'm Julie Grand. I represent Ward 3, which is the southeast side of Ann Arbor. I'm in my third term on City Council, so I've been on council since 2014. Prior to my time on council, I spent 6 years on the Park Advisory Commission for the city. A little over half of that time I was chair of that commission, so I became pretty familiar. So I've been doing things for the city in one capacity or another for over a decade now, which is hard to believe. I have, my background is in public health, so I have a master's in health behavior and health education and a PhD in health services organization and policy from the University of Michigan. I've taught in health policy studies on the Dearborn campus, and now I work mostly one-on-one with students in academic advising here at the university. In addition to this commission, I sit for the whole time I've been on council, I've been liaison to the Housing Commission, stayed on to be the Institutional Memory on Park Advisory Commission. I sit on the Greenbelt Commission. I do some things with schools, community events. Mostly I do people and parks on council.
Well, you're a good person to have on this commission. We welcome you.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. A minute about a minute on the next meetings. No, we begin with the agenda. I would like to make a change in the agenda, if it is all right with you. I propose that we include as number between Independent Community Oversight Police Commission and complaints, something on police chief search process. I found that out late, and I'd like to spend a few minutes on it. Any discussion? Any other changes that you'd like to see made? Can we have a motion to accept, approve?
I'll move to accept as amended.
Second? Anybody? All in favor? Aye. Then we move to the minutes, November minutes. Any changes, additions, deletions, alterations to the November minutes? None at all. Me neither. I want to say that these are some of the first minutes we've had from the time we got Margaret. They were so good that I recognize the meeting. I wish to thank Margaret, even though she's not here. I know she's in the middle of arbitration, I think, and so she may not come. January meeting.
Wait a minute, I'll move to accept,
thank you.
The minutes as they are.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I think it passed. January meeting. January meeting, we are going to host Arian Slay, Senior Assistant Attorney, and Chief Fannis, and they're going to talk about trespass. And I think there are some changes in trespass and in the form. And I suspect that Arian Slay is going to talk about a resolution that she wants to make to change it still further. So that should be an interesting meeting. We were talking about having a retreat in January, and so I want to talk about that for a minute. I don't think that's a good, I think January is going to be kind of full. So I'm wondering if we should do it in February or March? Any thoughts about that? I'd like to keep it alive, and I realize that
Well,
we
we
keep
have two-
postponing it.
I'm
Huh?
sorry.
No,
We have 2 vacancies.
We
and
do.
If we think that they're going to be
It's a good point.
filled soon, it would be nice to have kind of a full commission.
that's a
so
good
we can,
point.
um,
So should we just
but I don't-
revisit a date next meeting in January? See if we can get it.
Do we think we'll have 2 new members by then?
I know that the mayor knows about it and is working on it.
Okay.
May have already proposed somebody, I don't remember.
Come sit. Do you have a name tag for him? Do you have a name tag for him?
I do. I do, there's a name tag for you at the end. So let's just look at that again next month. Do you think we should take a minute while Ali is not prepared to allow himself to introduce himself, given that he's our second new liaison? Would that be?
I apologize here, I'm sorry.
Julie has introduced herself and said a few words about herself, and I wondered if you would also.
Okay, well, I'd like to apologize for being late. This is one of the more formal commissions I'm on. And so it's an honor to be here. I'm known throughout the town from owning and operating Jerusalem Garden for about 25 years now. I represent the 5th Ward in the Greater Ann Arbor. So it's, again, an honor. This is one of the more interesting positions I'm going to carry out, I think, when it comes to my assignments on commissions and boards. I know we have a pretty big task ahead of us with the police oversight and learning the process. And I think there's no, pre-described map, and we're kind of formulating things as we go. So I know it's new to a lot of people for a lot of things. So I apologize once again for being late, and feel free to ask me any questions as you need.
Thank you, welcome. Glad to have you. And that does work well. We're bringing us right into the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, which I keep calling ICPOP. I don't know if other people do. It's a long name, but the Police Oversight Commission, we have a role in that right now. And our role is to plan multiple ways to inform the community about the commission and the role and expectations of the commission members and its advisors. And I'd like us to start with the application. We have had an application, people have seen it, they've input into it, and I think I'm at the end of the inputs, and it's ready to finalize it. Any comments about it, or changes that people want to make last minute, or thoughts about it? Yeah.
I have some thoughts about it. So there are 4 council members who are going to be initially, we're going to be ultimately tasked with selecting the members of the commission. We will be meeting as a group next week. We were hoping to meet prior to this meeting, but wrangling all of our schedules together proved a little difficult. So we have already started receiving applications through our regular boards and commissions process. And I have seen a lot of promotions in the community on places like social media urging people in the community who are interested to apply through our regular boards and commissions process. So I'm not, what I was hoping this could avoid is, or maybe to be able to propose, is to have a 2-part process where someone may submit through our boards and commissions process, And then there would be supplemental questions then sent to that, people would be invited then to fill out a supplemental survey. So I'm hoping we can, at a minimum, eliminate some of the questions if we do choose to go forward with that process. So I'd just like to hear everyone's thoughts about that. I have talked to the two council members who have been appointed to the Oversight Commission, Jane Lum and Zach Ackerman, and they are both on board with that kind of two-step process.
So you're saying a two-step process would mean they'd start off with the one there is one online, and I sent a link to everybody about that, so you see what that looked like. It has a lot of questions on it that the one we devised has in it. So there'd be that, and then we would look at that list, and as they're received, I suppose, we would send them the opportunity to fill out a supplement. Any thoughts?
My initial thought is we want to make sure that people who don't have computers can do this, so that would be one advantage of having just, having all the, even if it meant some people having to repeat the answers. I mean, I don't know. We just want to make sure that everybody, particularly in communities that we really want to reach, has an opportunity to apply.
I share that concern. Are you concerned about the length of the survey then, given that may be one of the goals?
Yeah, although it also says at the beginning, you don't have to complete, you don't have to
Okay.
answer all the questions. But
But we
sure,
really
that's
do
a
need
concern.
quite,
Yeah.
we do
But
need
you're
to
right.
have
Yeah,
answers to
right.
questions.
I mean, this is good. I like the language about the seriousness of the commitment.
Right.
I think, there'll be a lot of applicants, and you want 11 that are really ready to dive in and do the work.
I'm afraid the two-step might be kind of confusing to people. I also am afraid, we have a lot of people we want to email it to, and we'd have to email it and have them do the first step and then explain that, and that, which is not necessarily that easy to figure out. And then send them another one. Seems a little cumbersome.
I don't really see a lot of overlap between the city board and commission application and our application. There's maybe one question that's redundant, the why do you want to serve on this board or commission? But otherwise, everything else we ask in our proposed application is in addition to what the city already asked. So I don't know why it would necessarily have to be a supplement instead of just directing everyone who applies online to fill out the application that we've already created.
I guess I also like the idea of having a record of the people, having it housed at the city, the number of the people who are applying. I think we have staff to support that process.
I don't know why we
So-
can't do that with the application that we've created. Why can't we just send that to staff, to forward all of those to staff?
I guess that would make me feel better. I'd like our clerk staff that supports our boards and commissions to help with, I think it would be helpful to this group to have some help with the
Sure, but that doesn't
organizational
mean that we
process.
shouldn't use the application. We can accomplish both things. We can use the application and also get clerk staff involved if we need to. That's not a reason not to use the application we've prepared.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
It's not a reason not to use the application we've prepared. We can
Right.
have the city involved, still use it.
Yeah, that could happen.
I mean, it's also one or the other, and if you need more supplemental information, I mean, I think you're right, Julian, that we want to make this as inclusive and expansive as possible in terms of reaching out to people, and we don't want to put up barriers. So, if more information, if people doing the selection felt that they needed more information, maybe they could send it, I don't know how standardized we want to be about it. I guess that's the question.
Well, I'm afraid if people only have more information from one person than another, and then they're not using the same kinds of questions,
Yeah.
they're gonna.
I'd like it to
it's
be
not fair.
consistent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is my biggest, I'd like
Yeah.
it to be, I'd like the city to play a role, because I think we're going to have a lot of applications, and so I don't want them
Right.
to get lost. And I want to make sure that we have a mechanism for follow-up with people who've already applied. Because
So-
we have groups in the community
Yeah.
that are encouraging them to apply through
Right.
our normal board and
Normal.
commission.
Yeah, but
Right.
in the board and commission application, it asks specifically for your phone number and also your email, right? So there's ways to contact those people and say,
There
fill
are.
out this application.
Absolutely.
Right. I know, initially, I had thought that our application was going to be put online the way the other one is.
Yes, that's it.
Kind of a separate place for people to go. But this whole process is kind of happening in our little silo and then also in the city silo.
Right.
And there hasn't been a lot of communication. So that's why it's happening the way it's happening, I
That's,
think.
that's true. We did go to Howard and
Can-
let them know
can I
that we
ask,
were doing it,
Yeah.
but it didn't,
How many applications have been submitted so
I
far?
don't know.
yeah. How many, do you know?
I think just a handful so far,
Okay.
but I have started, they've started getting forwarded to us.
Well,
So it got my attention.
So so that's one thing we can look at on this, that, we have applications must be received by a certain date, and then we give them, options, and it's all directed to the Human Rights Commission, where they're supposed to send this. So we should talk about that at least.
well, that could be changed easily.
Right,
I mean,
but,
where it's changed. But the application that we have actually tells people what it's about, and I
Right.
kind of like having
No, I
that
like
as
that.
part of it,
Yeah.
The one for the commissions says, as Vivian said, virtually, they're asking virtually nothing.
It can't just be generic.
No, I don't think so.
It will not work. If we have, you used the phrase two-part, if someone were to apply to one and not the other, does that mean that they would be excluded? And if so, that's a problem.
According to the ordinance, no.
That's what I thought.
And I'm looking at a copy of the proposed ordinance for this, and this is in the first section, Section 2, Initial Recruitment Process. Failure to apply shall not disqualify a person from being eligible for
Right.
appointment. And it says the mayor, city, and other community organizations may also solicit recommendations for nominations from the community. So they don't have to follow necessarily the established application procedures in order to be considered or even appointed, according to the ordinance.
On the other hand, one could say, could attach a note saying, we've tried to contact this person multiple times to explain there are additional questions, and they have not responded. I mean,
It is conceivable, although unlikely,
yeah.
that they may not necessarily have access to all of this information that we have. They just may have a general knowledge that this commission is in the process of being established,
Sure.
and they express interest without following the established procedures.
I have a question. The people who applied already, how did they know that this process started or opened for them already?
I think hearsay. It hasn't, it's been, and people have said, there are people who are trying to encourage people to apply. And so I think they've come up with their own.
Before we put it on internet and everybody can check into
Because it's a
the,
commission, and there is a standard commission.
Right, that's always open.
Yeah, it is.
At any time.
Right.
So anyone can submit for any board or commission, whether there are vacancies or not at any
Right.
time, to have their application on file. And sometimes people will submit for multiple boards and commissions through one application. So, and I know Jim Toy Center, for example, I saw on social media, they were encouraging
Okay,
people to apply.
Suppose you'd be too lazy, right, there's the chair.
of course.
You would want his support in that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. No, which I think is great.
Yeah.
It's just, but that link that I keep seeing out there is to the city's board and commission.
am I hearing that people are, agree that an application such as the one we put out is what we really think is needed?
Yes,
That they have to,
I think so.
Yes, we
Okay.
put serious work into that.
well, I think it will give serious information that you folks need. So it sounds like we have to find a way to make sure that people who want to be on the commission have either filled out that one or are you saying that you?
I think we can ask staff ask probably Kelly specifically at the clerk's office to, if they receive any applications. They've been, I think, already started forwarding them to those of us that are on the final selection panel, but we could just ask that if anyone submits an application, that they get sent the official application from this group.
Right, and if we want to eliminate redundancies, really it's the email address, phone number, mailing address, employer, and number 2 that are redundant, the basic background information. Every other question is not redundant.
There's one about conflict of interest that may be. I mean, there.
Right, but they will have already submitted that on the,
There's also
Right.
oh, we have a conflict of interest question on our?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, and there's a personal identity question on the
yes.
city commission.
But that's only for demographic, statistical reasons, and it only talks about ethnicity and gender, I think. It doesn't talk about anything other than that.
Oh,
yeah,
that's true.
So
oh,
the
yeah,
demographic
we don't
question
want-
isn't,
yes.
doesn't fully capture anything, and it
Right.
sort of implies that that's only for statistical purposes and not for consideration.
Right. No,
Yeah.
you want the one that we've got, I think.
I mean, that's what we're here for today, to talk about final changes to our proposed application. So I
Right.
think we should kind of go through and decide what final changes we want to make so that Julie can take it to the
Well,
people making the decision.
you know, unfortunately, you know, it's been like drinking out of a fire hose, as they say, for me joining council in the last month. So I'm not up to speed as most of the members here are, not yet at least, but I'm taking it in quick. Seems to be, there's multiple ways of landing in the positions that we're trying to fill, and there's not going to be just one way. My concerns are alleviated to a great degree, that we don't have to necessarily have it completely fine-tuned in one document, so to say. But I may just ask some questions that, because I ain't up to speed. What is the deadline for the applications?
We tentatively put January 31st.
Okay.
We think it's going to take that long
And
because you really want
how
to
many
make-
vacancies are there?
There are 11.
All of them? There
I
hasn't
think.
been a,
Is
there's
that true,
been no.
11?
It's 11 with council. The two I'm sorry, not council.
The two with the two liaisons?
The layers, well, no, there are two council persons who are appointed, but they're non-voting.
Yeah,
But
so it's,
there are 11 members.
From
It's an
here.
11-member
Yes.
So
commission.
nine vacancies?
No,
No,
No, there's
11.
11
11.
vacancies, but there are two council persons who
On
will
top of the
be-
11?
yeah,
However, those two have no voting privileges.
yeah, and they've already been chosen.
Right, and they have been already chosen.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So you're thinking we should go through this?
I'm thinking if
Question
we
for-
don't get something to
We've
the
gotta get
people
somebody.
who
You're
are making the
right.
decisions quickly, that we will not end up being a meaningful part of the process. I
Well,
think we're
no.
already seeing that,
Yeah. and
yeah, there's a
ours
lot of
is not.
outreach.
We have also received a unofficial application via our email from an individual who's expressed interest in wanting to be considered for appointment to that commission.
Yeah, and there will be people who will write, well, it depends, we have to send out messages too.
I
because
think with the
that's what we're
publicity
charged.
that has already been out there in terms of the commission, because it was different from the norm, and what has been reported in the news, that has sparked the interest, along with all of the meetings that transpired from the time that we did our initial work, and then Hillard Hines, and then, you know, all of the others that were involved, the task force. So I think this next phase is solidifying all of that work.
Right,
In terms of now getting those individuals who would want to be a part of that effort. The challenge that I think we may have is what we experienced when we were tasked with and successfully performed the responsibility of selecting individuals for the task force because we did not limit access in terms of a specific procedure for how they could express interest. So we got business cards from individuals, we got verbals, we got letters, and we encouraged individuals to subsequently complete the questionnaire, but the initial application, we did not dictate or require them to respond in any specific way other than to state that they were interested. And so we compiled all of that information, and we got excellent response. Made our job difficult to narrow it down to the ones that were ultimately selected for the task force. And I suspect that that effort will be duplicated with this next phase of selecting individuals, or at least recommending or even reviewing applications of those who have already expressed an interest in wanting to be a part of this commission.
I do have a question about that, about the application process. So Pam and I were part of a subcommittee along with Rick, who's since stepped down, that initially went through the applications and considered them one by one in detail. And I think, the application gave us a lot of insight into who was applying and what their strengths were, and I think the process allowed us to really choose some great individuals for the task force, and I think we did a really good job on it. I think the HRC has also been pretty open about wanting to have some say in the selection process. So I was wondering if Julie or Ali, if either of you have discussed whether or not the HRC would play a role in the selection process.
I think that's part of what we're going to be discussing at our meeting on Wednesday, a week from today, but I'm I think the belief was always that there would be recommendations that would come from this group, but that this group wouldn't be the sole group that might make recommendations, that there may be. I was at, for example, like Student Advisory Council meeting prior to this, and they're trying to get a student to apply to the commission, and may then be making, passing a resolution where they make a recommendation to council saying, we'd really like to see this particular, we've looked at student applications, or we've talked to students, and we think this student would be the best person to serve on the commission. So there may be a number of parallel processes, that some of which we may have a lot of control over, some which may be uninvited, but ultimately really helpful. So,
the
I think
HRC
we
would
need to talk to our other two counterparts, who are the liaisons to the police commission, but I certainly anticipate this group playing a pretty significant role in making recommendations.
Okay, because what that sounds like is that we might have as much of a role in this as any other commission or any outside group might have. And because we might be able to make recommendations, just like the JTCC might be able to make recommendations, or the commission you were talking about might make recommendations. But I think given how long the HRC has been involved in the process, that we are uniquely positioned to speak about what we think might make for the best individuals to sit on the ICPOC. So do you think that the HRC recommendations would be given as much weight as any outside recommendation?
I am assuming that they'll be given quite a bit of weight. I just know better than to make promises that I can't keep before talking to the two other individuals who will be tasked with making the selection. So I can only tell you what my expectations are, but I'm 1 vote out of 4 in this process, so I'd like to hear from Ali. I'd like to, and then I wanted that I'm.
It's something we can't really go into the details with, because we're not all on the same page just yet. I think our interests and our values and our thought processes are along with the same of what you just said, that this body has a lot of experience and is steeped in the knowledge and has sought out the issues and has put together another successful group before this. So it's shown competency, and I wouldn't see why it would be reluctant for someone like myself to sidestep recommendations. I think this is where we need to go and seek. But we got to make sure that, we're we're all together, you know, so.
And as
And
Pam pointed out, the ordinance itself explicitly states that there are multiple paths to the police commission, so I
Yes.
think we need to also follow that law, which says, you know, that writing which says that there are multiple paths, so I don't think.
Sure, there are multiple application processes, but we could still give our recommendations on everyone who applies based on whatever way they apply. So we could still make our recommendation on the student that's being recommended by another commission. We can say either we agree with that recommendation, we don't, just because someone else uses another application process instead of necessarily the one that we've worked on, doesn't mean that we don't have any thoughts on that.
So you're suggesting that we also be able to see all of the applications?
Yes. I am.
Yeah. I'm also concerned about the way this looks, and the way it actually is. That the process, it seems critical from all we've seen in the last couple of months, that people think that there has been a fair, systematic process of peopling this commission and of making these kinds of decisions. And so I want somebody to agree on a process that doesn't look like, or doesn't actually even include, people just getting in front of a process that isn't based on real thought and agreement that this would be the best person for that job.
And I
by
think,
somebody.
right, and I think the four of us have probably signed up for, you know,
Oh,
one of
I
the
mean-
most thankless tasks in all of city council for 2019, so it will be highly scrutinized.
I mean,
You
Yeah,
know, I've sat, you know, I mean, I think part of the reason of bringing some council members who have some experience is because we went through this process in a different stage, but essentially with you, and so we take it very, very seriously, and we wouldn't have raised our hands to do this if we didn't take it extremely seriously, and just sit on this group if we didn't value your opinions and want to make sure that they were part of the process, and an important part of the process. But I just know until we sit down with those other two members that I don't want to make promises that that's not how I practice.
I mean, I think there needs to be buy-in, and if there isn't buy-in by this group and going forward, we're not going to succeed. So in order to succeed, you got to make sure that there's buy-in, and there's no need or reason or issue right now where that buy-in shouldn't occur. So, I think, you know, I'm new to this whole thing right now, like I said earlier, and I can just take these issues with me when we go to meet next week and make sure that everyone understands the concerns the community has and this body has in order to succeed. And so this is not the time to, you know, sow seeds of suspicion or doubt or anything like that. I think, you know, we need to get serious buy-in and, you know, and just, you know, trust, I guess, at this point. You got to trust.
Let's see if we can finalize a questionnaire or an application. And if at all possible, get everybody who wants to be on the commission to fill it out, because I think that would make it look and be more equitable. Are people ready to go through it?
Is there a printed copy?
I'm sorry, I don't.
I do not have an extra copy. Can people share?
I don't have a hard copy.
Some people do.
So marked.
I only have one copy. I'm sorry, I usually, you know what, there's an awful lot here, and
Which number was it sent out in the materials?
12-5.
You guys send that to me, Julie?
Was it sent in the email, or is it in the
It's a-
published agenda?
It's an email. Yes, it was in the published agenda,
Oh,
too.
Yeah, I can get
I'm
it
sorry.
published. I'll get it in the published.
Yes.
agenda. I'll get it to you in 1 second.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can go ahead, I'll
You might have it also, because I sent the agenda materials to you. It would be, I think, in the first one, part one of the materials.
Oh, okay.
I think it might have been part, I don't remember. Would it help if I read each one?
Just go ahead, I'll be able to follow along.
Should we just start with question number one?
Yeah. Question number one, how did you learn about the Ann Arbor Independent Police Oversight Commission? What role do you see the commission playing in the community?
My only suggestion there would be to change it. If it's going to be referred to as the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, it says,
You're right, make sure the name is right.
yeah.
And it's not quite right, okay. Anybody else? And there's not a question that's as meaty on the standard commission questionnaire. Question two, what interests you most about this commission, and what issues do you think it needs to address? What contributions to the commission do you see yourself making? Are we just going to approve all of it, or do you want to?
Well, number two is somewhat redundant, right? That's the
Yes.
only question they really ask on the other commission application.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, but I think that, in that case, if it's redundant, they can just copy and paste, right? They have a or they can say, like, see my city commission application. I don't know that we need to take it out there, because we'd like to see it from people who are just applying through this application and who haven't done the other one. But I think if we're going through the city and the city is just collecting a database of these applications, then they'll all be cross-referenced anyway, it's so easy.
So we'll just leave it.
I think it looks good.
Somebody else want to read it?
Do we need to read through them?
I don't know if we
Or
need to read
should we just say, does
them.
anybody have any issues with any of them?
Yeah, I feel like we've already talked about it so many times.
have-
We really have.
There was just one that number 13,
Okay.
Number 13.
and it's really just to make it, well, first I was wondering if we want to include it. If we do, it's fine, but then I was just going to make it read hopefully a little more clearly. I would just say instead, is there someone else you would like to recommend to serve on the commission, instead of the way it currently reads? Which is there someone else who you think would be a good candidate for, it doesn't even make sense, for a member of this commission,
Membership,
and would
yeah.
like to recommend?
It's missing a word or something.
So, does that change okay?
It is with me. Say it
Yep,
again.
I like that.
Once.
Is there someone else you would like to recommend to serve on the commission?
Who you would like to recommend?
Right, or you?
Okay.
And then leave the second sentence there.
Okay. Anything else?
I had some comments just on the very long introduction,
Okay.
which is useful, maybe redundant in places. Hopefully it won't scare people away that we want, that we would want to have served. But there are a bunch of little things, I'm like the grammatical witch here, but lots of like missing commas and things like that, but, we don't need to go through those. But
No.
I would take out the 1 to 4 hours per week, which is 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet point under the commissioner's commitment will be, because we can't say how many hours it will be. It might be more, it might be less. So I would just cross out 1 to 4 hours per week, and instead it would say, and also give additional time for subcommittee work.
That's fine.
Okay.
And then the other, it's just little kind of substantive thing was 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth bullet point up from the bottom of that same section, to produce an annual report for the community that shows what the commission did and recommended over 12 months. I mean, it's annual. You can get rid of, I
Right,
think,
over
over
12
12 months, and instead just write did and recommended, and then and includes data on complaints, compliance, and improvements that shows what the commission did and includes data on.
Okay. Good.
And then we also need to talk about where these applications should be sent. Do they come to the HRC or not? Because that's what it currently says.
Yeah,
If they come to the HRC, we can just forward it to the city staff.
Right.
we could do that.
Unless they come via email.
Yeah, I mean, and then we can forward that email, right?
Mhm.
I think one of the thoughts was that they wanted multiple people to receive
That's
applications.
true. That's true.
To make people less worried about things
Yeah.
going straight to the city. So I think the applications, there should at least be the option for people to apply through us. And so I think that we should still keep it the HRC email, and like if they want to send an electronic copy, we can just forward it to the city for their records.
Are you comfortable with that, Julie?
It's just, I mean, I don't want to pull the wool over someone's eyes and pretend like it's not going to come to the city, because
How is it done in
It's
other
a
boards and
city
commissions? I mean,
It
you
goes-
apply through the regular board and
Ma-
commission application process that goes to, now to Kelly and the clerk's office, and then he either sends it on to
I mean,
the
it
mayor if it's a mayoral appointment, or like for Greenbelt, for example, where I make the appointments, he sends them to me.
Just seems like that's kind of what we'd be looking to do, you know, to be honest with you, is to have something that's more in line with our current practices with all the, you know, so I mean, I don't want to, you know, overstep or anything, but just consistency is, sorry, should
Right.
have the mic on. Just having the consistency. So, I mean, it's just you start running into, you know, who gets to see the application and who doesn't. I mean, you know, it's really important to make sure that it's handled properly. And so it's a really good point to be bringing up right now on how and.
Right. The process we're proposing is actually consistent with the way the task force that was created. So we're not, you know, recreating the wheel here. We're doing something that is consistent with, you know, what's previously been done with the police oversight work. And also, is this the way we applied to the HRC through this website? Because that's
It's
not.
not exactly the same. I think the website's fairly new. I've never seen it before.
It's not at all consistent, that's not my experience at all.
Sometimes even when someone approaches someone in the community about serving on a board or commission, they will then ask that person to fill out an application.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree,
Yeah.
but that is my point. We're actually trying to pull from diverse parts of
Sure,
the community,
sure.
and sometimes it does require doing something a little different, and that's kind of how we were able to create that task force,
Right.
and that's why we're being a little
Right.
bit, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
why we
oh,
don't
sure.
wanna
I just, maybe you want to
completely-
even consider adding language that states like this, you know, that your application will eventually end up at the city, because I don't, this is a council that is banging the transparency drum very loudly, and, I think we'll want to make sure that this is a super
Right.
transparent process.
And I think that's something, didn't we put that in here, or did we remove that language
I mean, I
that
think
notes
also the
that it
ordinance
would?
does
Well, we-
state that we're not involved with a selection process, and says that the 1, 2, 4 council members are. So obviously, I feel like the ordinance does make it clear that the city will see the application at some point. But I think, you know, people would feel better knowing that the HRC is also seeing the applications. And the HRC would also have an idea of who's applying.
I think that's true. I actually think that sometimes the city applications are a problem, at least for people in the HRC who apply to this commission, because they're filed away until somebody asks about them.
Right.
So they're not really, whereas we have usually acknowledged them that they've come in. One of the reasons we may have to see these right away is that we're asking for other recommendations. And so we really need to act on them and reach out to whoever they recommend.
Right. I think that also, I would encourage this group, since I'm not voting, to think of it where it says selection is expected to take place in early February. I think that is extraordinarily optimistic, given the volume that I anticipate will come forward,
I
and given the scrutiny
That
that
was Howard's
that we want.
timeline.
So I would maybe just yank the language altogether
Okay.
about timeline,
But we
and
could put the language that you're suggesting there, which is that, all applications will be,
forwarded to the council selection.
liaisons,
Yeah,
so the
Yeah.
yeah,
committee, yeah. Right.
that's great. I think,
Okay.
liaisons of the Human Rights Commission and the,
And I think the other thing is when people fill out the online application, they press submit, they don't really know that it's going to this person who's sending it to this person, right? You know, but they don't, do they?
I don't know. It's been such a
So
long,
from their
yeah.
point of view, it might really not.
They're
feel
just
so
applying,
different.
right? They're
Right.
just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
It does help people to know when we expect to be able to tell them if they're going to be asked to serve.
Right.
And whether early February is too early or not, I can't speak to that. Probably is, I don't know.
Well, if this group wants to make recommendations that then we will then go through our own process, you would at least need to have 1 to 2 meetings of the HRC, right? Before that would even come to
Well,
council.
we've
So
had
I would
special
start,
meetings. No,
We had special meetings
we
before.
okay.
speed it up.
But you would,
It's
I
going
mean,
to take
how long?
time, there's no question
Right. I
about
mean,
it.
if you want to put forth a set of recommendations, how long do you think that will take? guess
I,
that's the
I would
question.
feel easy with in early spring.
That is not
Howard
the
will
city
not.
administrator's deadline at all.
Plus,
I said I would. I know that he gave a
I-
deadline,
Yes, he did,
and that his deadline was very quick.
yes.
But isn't that going to also coincide with the process for selecting the next police chief and the intent behind
Yes, that's why he's
waiting.
done it.
For that to begin was this commission? Because we wanted to ensure that that individual had knowledge, whomever that individual is, will have direct knowledge of at least one of the responsibilities that they will have, i.e. the Police Oversight Commission. So pushing it back, I'm not opposing you, Dwight, and I'm not,
No,
in
no.
any
Yeah.
way disagreeing with you, but I'm just speaking to the timeline that has been put in place for selecting the next police chief. So we want to
I-
at least have something in place so that we can move this process along and have that dovetail nicely with the next police chief.
I do have questions about, I mean, maybe this is jumping ahead and I can ask this later, but I do have some concerns about that too. Because it does seem like the police chief search process is already starting. It does seem like HR is like selecting, is already starting their process, things are already moving along, and that there really isn't any intention to involve the ICPOC in this.
No, they really do want to, and they would like us to finish this process by, they really want it. The first deadline that the city administrator gave us was the end of January to have it selected, and people pushed back on that.
If people were selected in February, would that be too late to be involved in the police chief search process? When do they
I don't
want
think
to
so,
be?
because that police search process is getting a little bogged down, too. But January, what I was going to tell you is that January, the first week in January, second week in January like 7th to 9th, whatever that week is, the search committee is going to be here, the search company. And they're going to be holding the equivalent of listening sessions for what we want for police.
And I think that's,
So it's going to take some time.
I think that seems kind of problematic because isn't that search commission the people that the ICPOC should be talking to? If we don't have an ICPOC before the commission comes to solicit ideas from the members, then what are we rushing for?
Well, they're going to be more, they
Or
will
they're gonna be more
participate
listening
more
sessions.
effectively at the end of that. They're going to do those kinds of sessions with the community, with the Human Rights Commission, with all kinds of.
Sure, and like, Sure, and it sounds like,
But
you
not
know,
with this group, because it won't have been formed yet.
yeah, so that's what
No.
I'm saying. If they won't have been formed yet at that point, what are we rushing
It's
on
not
this process for?
it's not ideal,
If
huh?
they're, what are we rushing on this process for if they're never going to be selected in time to be meaningfully involved in the police chief search process? Sounds like
We
we're
haven't
going to be
given
too
up
late
yet.
anyways.
Yeah.
I think the bigger issue is having the actual ordinance for the commission in place as opposed to the actual members of the commission, so that whomever was selected as the police chief would be someone who was wanting to actively engage with that group. I don't think the group members were the issue.
He wanted them to.
Ideally,
Yeah.
but I think I know at least when we started this process, in terms of the police chief hire, it was more about having someone who was on board with working with a citizen
I
commission.
don't think that that's what the task force was told. I think the task force was pushed to complete like a really monumentous task in too short of a time because they were told that the ICPOC members would be involved in the police
Right.
chief search process, and that was important to the city. And I think that we've been told a lot of weirdly conflicting things, and that the task force was acting the way it did because of that expectation.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, one of the other reasons the ordinance was passed when it was we had 4 new council members joining, council. So you have to think about that, and they did a lot of heavy lifting. So, the 4 new members would not be coming into something they did not have the experience to weigh in on a very important ordinance. So, I agree, we did hear that argument that we needed it in place so the hiring for the next police chief could be included in those discussions. But I think, having the body in place and having the ordinance is critical. And the membership is going to be constantly changing. And so I think the individuals, although they are important, they're not going to be instrumental in that process. What is instrumental is having that body and an ordinance in place to begin with, and that's what we have. I think what we need to remember is time is not on our side, and we perhaps maybe get a 30-day reprieve or a 60-day reprieve, but that's still not as much time as people probably want to put into this process because it means so much. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done in vetting and apply, and going through the applications and finding the people to go and make up the body. We need to do it in a relatively short period of time.
I spent hundreds of hours on that task force, and it was not clear to any of us that it was necessary for the people to be named on the commission before police chief was selected. Howard wanted that,
Yeah.
but I didn't hear anybody on the task force who felt that that was a necessity.
The ordinance was a necessity, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that.
And if anyone has ever worked with Councilmember Lum, she's a deliberative person. So just looking at this date, I can't imagine, after sitting next to her for 4 years, that she will turn this around in a couple weeks.
Okay.
So,
There is a way to incorporate a lot of what we've said, especially in being involved in the selection of the next police chief, and that is to ensure that when that application process begins, that this ordinance is included in that information, so that applicants are aware when they apply that this is going to be one of the key things that they will be tasked to address as the next police chief. So while it doesn't necessarily provide us with a win-win in terms of being involved, the commission, the Oversight Commission, applicants will be fully aware that this will be one of their obligations and responsibilities. So giving them that information as part of the application process is a way to ensure that those who apply are fully aware of at least one of their obligations.
Can we then get back to the application and make sure that we know?
I had one other question.
Sure.
It says the deadline for applications is January 31st, 2019. I know when we were putting together the task force, some of them came in a little later. I mean, do we want to say applications must be received by, or sent by, or postmarked by? Or do we want to just leave it vague? It's up to you.
Maybe we shouldn't include a deadline.
I think we have to, shouldn't we? Don't we? How are we not going to include a deadline?
When I was a dean, one of the things the previous dean taught me to cheat on was to say with the expectation. So applications are expected by.
Ah. You comfortable with that?
Right. Or the review process begins on, right? So,
Not really a timeline.
yeah. I mean, I know because the other boards and commissions processes don't tend to have deadlines, they tend to be fairly open. If we get a really fabulous candidate for something, we will, I know it's been my practice, for example, on Greenbelt, to sort of, wait until we have qualified people, but we're going to have qualified people. Yeah.
So if I say the review process will begin on February 1st. Reasonable? Anything else?
There was a question about, I believe, number 5 being optional.
Yes.
And I believe the language that is inclusive in this says that not responding to the questions does not disqualify.
You're right. So that's a
So I'm
double.
concerned that that question of all is optional.
I understand that, but that is what the
Yeah.
legal department said
But I
was,
think I understand what Leslie is saying. If like the preamble to our application already says
It
you don't have
does,
to
I-
answer everything, then that's already, then that's,
I
then that
pointed that
optional
out
is
to Margaret.
redundant.
Yes, but she said she really likes to have both.
Yeah, but
Because,
it does sort of mean that question is singled out in a weird way. Why not put optional next to every question then?
well, because this one conceivably is illegal.
Sure,
I
but,
mean, or there may be legal problems with it.
sure, then why not put optional next to everything? Why not put optional next to everything? Everything's optional. Like, we've already covered our asses by saying that.
I don't know
like,
how
by
it's up.
double cover.
I don't know why it would be illegal. I mean, these kinds of questions are asked.
They're not asked for employment. We're not, this is not
You're
exactly
employing
employment.
anyone.
But
And I mean, honestly, if someone couldn't answer this question, I think they would be hard pressed to be able to do the work of the commission
we think so too.
and have those
Right,
kinds of
which is why it's
conversations.
a
Yeah,
nice,
and one of the
fun,
problems we
optional
had with the
question.
task force is that we had that in brackets as optional, and it was a question that it was the most ignored question from the applicants because the optional label came next to it. We had multiple applicants that only didn't answer that one.
That would be a red flag for that applicant.
It
though,
was a
so-
red flag for
Right.
us, but like,
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, I think that's kind of important. Like, you give
Yeah, I
someone
do
an
too.
optional question that's clearly substantive and they choose not to answer it, that's a red flag.
Margaret did not say that we needed to. She said, at least my understanding what she said, and I can check again, is that they like it a lot. They would prefer it.
Could you bold the optional language maybe in the introduction, in the directions, and then remove optional?
I can try that. But she did know when she said that it appeared twice.
But I'm not understanding the why.
If somebody questions it, I guess, they can, if somebody sues on this basis,
then can we just point to that other optional language? I don't know if that saying optional twice is like a magic, like Beetlejuice,
I
Beetlejuice,
don't
Beetlejuice,
know.
we're clear.
What are the damages for not serving on a board or commission? Not being appointed to a board or commission?
I don't know. Public, personal.
So they look at it just like their demographic question has a disclaimer And instead of answering it, when you scroll down ethnicity, you can put prefer not to answer instead of answering it, even though you know that they're only collecting that information for statistical purposes. That's just, to me, the way lawyers do things. But I mean, obviously, we have a lot of lawyers here who's just like,
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to let go of it. You know, they're just going to do the risk-averse thing, you know. And I understand that. So
Our lawyers
I don't have a
are
problem with optional.
But I'm just thinking about, you're saying the loss, so whenever I think about someone suing the city, I think about what is our liability
It's a good question.
as a city?
It's a huge waste of our city attorney's time is to defend those lawsuits. It
Yeah.
really is.
Right, no, I mean, I
It's-
sit in all those closed sessions,
Yeah.
I'm aware. But I just, you know, in terms of, I guess this group needs to decide how important it is to them in weighing the risk of that liability, and if that, you know, when I think about, at least in terms of monetary damages, I don't know what kind of damages someone could really sue for not being appointed to a board or commission. But I'm not a lawyer.
It's a waste of my tax
So,
dollars.
yeah,
Again,
yeah.
I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
Frivolous lawsuits.
Okay, did we come out with a solution? I didn't think so.
I think kind of, there's.
I think we can go ahead and remove it,
Okay.
and they can put it back if they want to. I hear people who feel strongly that it should not be there.
I've heard from several task force members that they do feel really strongly about
I
it, that
know.
they didn't like,
It does send an odd message, doesn't it?
yeah, and that they
Not to
didn't like the
remove-
optional
to
in
ha-
their
to have it in
application.
there.
And-
I
And
agree.
my whole premise is, we're trying to be very uniform, consistent, and transparent. This says to me, red flag. And I think it invites more attention than it does if it's not there, than if it remains.
Okay.
And I agree with you, Julie Grant, that lawsuits happen all the time. So I'm not an attorney either, but the likelihood of anyone prevailing over something, as you have mentioned, Kareem, being frivolous, I'm not an attorney either, but I'd take that risk.
I guess I just know how
Okay.
many frivolous lawsuits the city is subject to, so if it's important, and you push forward, and I just try never to act based on fear of being sued, when something is important, and especially when there's
Okay.
not a significant liability, known liability attached.
Okay. Well, I will transmit this discussion to Margaret and fight for bolding the first line, first mention, and getting rid of the second, optional, because I think that would be wise. Anything else before we close this out? Have we decided we were going to have it sent to HRC, and then we would forward it to whomever? Okay.
But if someone were to find this online promoted through another group and it was sent to the city instead, we would just make sure it goes back and forth between both groups.
So we'll definitely, and in fact, we may number them or something so that we are sure that everybody's got everybody's. Okay? Then we're done with that. Then I have one other application issue. Okay, so that's the first application issue, is that we approve it. Do we need to vote on this, or are we just approving it? Is there any need to vote on it? I don't think so. Does anybody have any problems with this? Okay. The two application problems, we can make a supplement that is,
No,
I
not
think they can just be
supplement,
mailed the new, they can be emailed the new application.
email the new application, okay. So we need a form letter for explaining why we're doing that. There is in the ordinance a clause that says that if a person wants to, they can have an in-person interview instead of filling out the application. And I suggest that if we do have an in-person interview, it should just be somebody filling out this application for them, which is reasonable. But is there, I don't want to force us to have lots of in-person applications, but I do want that to be available. So just a line in the promotional materials, that it's available, and please contact the HRC if you want to have one. Does that sound reasonable? Okay.
Is that inclusive of a video or a Skype interview or a Google Hangouts or something? I'm just curious about that too, in terms of accessibility, if somebody, you
Yeah.
know, has limited mobility, or if there's some, just throwing that out there. I don't know how anybody else feels about that.
Does anybody have any issue with having a Skype or phone
I
or
think it's a good
anything?
idea.
But I think what we'd have to do is sit with a blank one and just go through it.
Sure.
Okay. And I think we're okay with that. Publicizing the commission, recruiting process and encouraging. So, we've got a few things, few ways to publicize it. The city has some ways, and we have some creativity. We have an extensive email list already because of what we've done so far and various things we've been involved with on outreach. Jordan has created something, and I'd like Jordan to talk about it for a few minutes because I think it's a great tool for us in the future and for this particular application.
Yeah.
Why don't you?
So it's a list of nonprofit groups that service mostly Ann Arbor, but then I do have a tab, which I've arranged it in groups, if you will. So those that service, you know, or are more focused on health and wellness, or their church and faith groups, or they work with youth, or just general community enrichment. And as I said, there is a tab for those that are outside of the scope of Ann Arbor, because I do think that's still relevant. Washtenaw County, being that I also work for a nonprofit, I understand that a lot of these systems and a lot of these groups are, you know, intertwined with one another. There's a lot of overlap. So I felt it was important to include them as well, whether or not we choose to reach out to them. I did also find that there may be quite a few people that we could reach by mail versus email or telephone. So I think through doing this research, I really did find that there are a multitude of different ways that I think we need to reach out to these groups.
When you and I talked about this originally, Jordan, we were thinking that nonprofits are good groups to recommend, to get the word out and to recommend people who they know or they work with. And so I think we're talking about a special letter that says, this is what we're looking for, and we would like your help in getting nominations. We will be glad to reach out to the people you nominate.
Right, right. And I think a lot of my focus in doing the research for this list was on sort of restorative justice organizations, social justice organizations. And I do think that they will bring us constituents who are more than capable. They work in this, you know.
So you've got something really, I think, a really good tool that we didn't have before. And we have a list that includes, you know, people we may not have reached before.
Right.
See how that works.
It was a great service.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I know I'm talking to, but
No,
if that list didn't make you happy to live in this community, I don't know.
Right?
Thank you.
There are a lot of
It brought a huge
nonprofits.
smile to my face, and I was like, I need to meet this Jordan person. So, thank you.
Doing good work.
She deserves it. This was not easy, I'm sure. Especially getting a name of a contact person, and I think that makes all the difference. When you mail something to a nonprofit with, you know, not necessarily a good administration, you may be mailing it to
May be lost.
no one,
Right,
right?
right, that was
So
the
that's
biggest
gonna be
feat.
good. So we've got those two things, and we can email, and when we email the questionnaire and the ordinance, so that, you know, that's nice. We can also try, we can see if the city can put this up online. And we could refer them to that as well. I did talk to Lisa Wandrus. She's not sure how long it would take to do that, and it would require Howard to ask for it, and that, we can ask for it if you think that's important. City promotion. Lisa also is involved in that, and we.
Can I just ask a quick question or make a comment? So this listing of reaching the masses to encourage applicants, can we, as individual commission members, take a look at that? I know we have what you've put together, Jordan, but I'm thinking back to when Rick was on the commission, and he invited us to submit lists or individuals for contact. It was for a different reason, and that was for presenting to the commission. But the reason why I'm asking is because I'm looking at your listing, and I don't recall all of the specifics of our email listing. But perhaps there are yet other groups or individuals
Right.
that are not on either of those lists that we may want to reach out to. I'm thinking specifically of the ID program for Washtenaw. Because our former commissioner, Keita Cowan, spearheads that. And another entity that I didn't see under faith groups, but it may be on our email listing, is the Ministerial Alliance. And I mention that because my pastor is the president of that. I don't know that he's necessarily not on the listing, I'm just saying I don't see it. So I'm saying, can we get what we have as a commission, review it, and then if it's not on that list, because that will ultimately be the list that we then, work from, and then add that to there, because we do want to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Yes,
Do you
please.
have a way that you would like to receive things, Jordan?
Well, and so you're
Just
more than
email
welcome to send it, yeah, in an email, or it is a working document, so it's a Google Docs, so you
Okay.
can
Just add to it.
type
Yeah.
into it, please,
Okay.
yes. I think the more growth, the better for this.
Okay. Okay. And we'll do that for the email list, and I will contact Rick and see if he's got other organizations that we don't have. And I don't even, I forgot about that. Good.
Do you think, Leslie, the point we talked about a couple, 3 weeks ago, to translate this
Thank
to
you.
Arabic language?
That's right.
And we can put it in the Islamic Center, There
Okay.
are at least 1,000 people, they go there, and I know a couple of them, I talked to few, a couple of them, they are interested to apply, But if we have it in Arabic, will be good way to promote this in certain
Do you think
Middle
the whole
Eastern
questionnaire
community.
should be in Arabic, or because
Both,
whoever
English and Arabic.
whoever joins probably has to also
Of
speak
course, yeah.
English? Okay.
But just for promotion, to the community, like just what you mentioned about, some churches or, religious centers or whatever,
We should have the final version of this questionnaire in a day or two, and you can have it.
I have a fellow, I asked him if he can translate 5-6 pages
will
for
do it.
us. He said it would take just a couple days, He
Okay.
can give it to us back.
Will he charge us?
No, free.
That would be wonderful.
But if people respond in Arabic, then what?
No, it's just really for promotion, but just
So
like
not
what
the actual
Leslie said, whoever want to apply for such a commission, of course, he had to be very, good in English to be involved, but just for promotion.
So what would you do with it? What would you do with it? How would it work? Because we have the same questions in Spanish as well. And we
Right.
do have somebody who will translate it in Spanish. But I'm trying to understand how.
I think the idea just for promotion, for people to know about it, think about it if they think they are interested to apply or
So they'd read
recommend
it.
somebody to apply,
So would we have to say, please complete it in English?
I think what the commissioner is trying to say is that it's not the application itself, but just marketing tools to the Islamic community or other communities, but not the application itself. So,
No, the application itself had to
You'd
be
want the
filled
whole
by
application.
English,
You would want the
Yeah,
application,
yeah.
okay.
But just,
And you know, the first
promotion.
page of that application is promotion.
Right, right.
So all you'd need, if you wanted to post it, just put it on a bulletin board.
Right.
The first page could say, go to this website to
Website,
apply.
yeah.
But you still want the whole application done.
I think it will help just in the center, the few people who doesn't read English very well,
Okay,
to understand what the whole idea is. So
okay.
they can tell his wife or his son or daughter or whatever, are you interested,
Okay. And Lori Saginaw said she could get us somebody to do it in Spanish. So I think we should take advantage of that.
It seems like it appeals, it's inclusive, right?
Yes.
If you see a document, you see an application, and it inherently becomes more relevant to you, I think.
Okay. Okay, is everybody on board with that? Okay, let's do it. Thank you. Do you think those two languages are the, I mean, we could go on forever.
Sure.
No, we could go on forever, but someone that came to me on Friday and had a concern about someone dealing with ICE who is Chinese.
Yes,
And the largest minority community in the city is Chinese. So if we had someone who could translate it into Chinese, that would be a good thing, too.
that would be a good thing. Okay. Could that person help us find a translator?
I can ask.
There's also Michigan has those translate-a-thons or translation.
Telephones?
No, they have events where students come and not-for-profits and other groups can submit documents to be translated. So, I can visualize it, but anyway, that could be a possibility.
Okay. We would be looking for a Chinese, especially if that is the, yes, that
I
is.
think in the court system, they have
Well-
translator who certified. This fellow, I talked to him, he is through Wayne County Court, certified to translate, between judges and lawyers and this kind of thing during the court, I'm sure Chinese or Mexican or whatever, they have such service too, through the court system.
Yeah, they're not free, though.
No,
so-
imagine not.
Well, I guess the underlying point is, like, as it goes on, as this body continues to grow and evolve, that to have that part of the application, because you do want to reach out to the minority groups in the community. Those are the most affected
Right.
population that we're trying to protect. So it's really good to bring that point up and bake it into future, if not this year's application, into next year's and the years after that. It's a pretty good idea to have that, seeing that is the targeted population you want to, reach out to.
Yeah.
It's through the Language Resource Center at the university.
Ah,
They have students who can minor in translation studies.
so is this, would they be good, or would they be reasonably good translations?
I think so. Yeah, I think they.
Yeah. They'd certainly be dedicated to it,
Yeah,
yeah.
we don't have much time, so we'll see what we can do. Promotion through the media and promotion through the city are the two of the last things. And then promotion through influencers. So the city includes the website, Vivian, the city's promotion. What do they have available?
I'm not sure. We've
You know
only
that-
ever talked to them about the Facebook and Twitter, but I'm sure that they have like print resources that are available.
I think they have press releases.
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
Okay. Who is interested in promotional materials? Because we'll probably end up having to maybe confer, and maybe more than one of us should be involved in this. So is there anybody who's interested in the promotional materials, looking them over, or
I see.
helping to write promotional materials for this?
I am.
Good, thank you, Jordan.
Is Rick available even though he's no longer on the commission? I know his circumstances.
Yeah. And the circumstances are better, so I guess I could ask, but I kind of hate to.
Because he was our resident
He
marketing
was,
expert, so.
he was very good. And he might at least read it. He might be willing to read it. I think he does miss us.
I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I don't think we really have time to. I
We
think
don't,
can-
and we have stuff
I
for,
think so, just some really basic, simple,
I think so.
simple statements about there's going to be this new commission, and look at the ordinance, this is what you would be doing. If you want to use some of the language, the description in the beginning of this, and, you know, the application can be found here. I mean, keep it simple.
okay. And there are people who are looking at influencers. The Black Ministerial Alliance that Pam was talking about, black sororities and fraternities, things like this, where you could talk to somebody and they could spread the word. And we're beginning to get some of that.
I know that you mentioned in an earlier meeting that there was an ad hoc committee that was forming to talk about publications.
Yes, and
Whatever happened with that?
that ad hoc committee is meeting tomorrow night at
Church
the
of
Good Shepherd.
Church of the Good
Church.
Shepherd.
And you are all invited if you want to be involved. And that's, I know you were on the mailing list for that, so you should have it. I think it's from 5:30 to 7, something like that. And my understanding is that those people are looking at those kinds of ad hoc ways to get the word out and to encourage people to apply. Anything else that we need to do right now for this project? It's all the things that are on my thinking. Then let's move on to the police church search process, which is beginning, as Vivian pointed out, even now, soon. The week of October 7th, they are going to be here. This group is called SGR.
Not October.
January, thank you. And they've got, I sent you their materials. They have a three-point process that they're talking about, and they know a lot about the first part and not as much about the second and third. Maybe a lot about the second, too. The third is the most important, though. But the first is going to involve some engagement sessions. I don't know what they're going to call them. They're like the listening sessions, and I'm afraid they're going to have the same kind of result as a listening session, but I hope not. They're planning on having public meetings at Bryant, at the library, and I think at Arrowwood, and maybe one other place. They were talking about 3 or 4. They're also having interviews with people. And the main question they're asking is, what type of police chief are you looking for? We have been scheduled with our input to meet with them on Tuesday, January 8th from 10 to 10:45, and 4 of us, less than a quorum, can join. So if you want to be part of that, please give me a call.
So during the workday, there's
It's
no
during-
other time?
Doesn't sound like it. It sounds like we have been assigned 10 to 10:45.
Could you repeat the
On
date, please?
Tuesday, January 8th
And that's from 10
to 10:45.
Where?
They didn't tell me that either, but I assume it's City Hall. I'll find out. There's also a questionnaire, and I don't think it's online yet, but I sent you a copy. And I'm a little confused. I don't know. It's a nice question, but they're spending a lot of time and energy on the answers to this question, and I think I told
10 to 10:45.
Dwight, everybody's going to say they want Superman with a good heart or something like that. I don't know that they're going to get really good information, but that's what they're doing. And what they're planning on doing is getting a profile of what we want in a police chief, and then they're going to put that in the job description, and then they're going to release the job description.
This is the search firm?
This is the search firm.
Is this the only resource that they are using for the selection of the police chief?
No, no. No, they said they've got lots of resources, including people that they know. They are, as you know, an organization that has posting on their website, so they have lots of people posting. They know who's coming and going, at least in the South.
Not so much the search firm, though.
Yes,
That's all well and good for the search firm.
they're also
they're-
posting.
Okay, but that's one entity.
What do you mean with one entity?
That's one resource for soliciting applications for the police chief. What other resources are they utilizing, if any, to receive applications for the position, other than going through this search firm?
I think they're having the search firm do all their posting. That's my understanding.
That-
Although when I asked, and I did ask, because I talked to you before
You
the
did.
meeting.
Which is why I'm asking the question.
No, it's a good question, because as Pam, who is our expert on
Recruiting. Yeah.
recruiting,
So I'm concerned that the city is putting all their eggs in one basket by saying, we have, or will, contract with this search firm to do all of our work and get us whom we think we want to be our next police chief. And I'm saying, what other resources are they utilizing to obtain that same information? And I mentioned several ways that they can utilize that cost them absolutely nothing, and still maybe, yeah, you may get a plethora of people who apply that are, that don't meet the criteria, but at least you've put the word out there. So I'm concerned that, and I don't have anything against this company because I don't know them, but my point is I don't see the benefit of going through one entity, especially for a position like this.
well, Pam, what I did ask them about that, and they said that this firm will post in any place we ask them to, plus places that they know of that theoretically we don't. And so I think that the strategy is that the firm will do all the posting, but that the posting will be anywhere we want it and anywhere they want it. So that it may be a large number of different places.
So who makes that determination?
I asked them to find out where they were posting, and I said that we would come up with other names. I know I can come up with some, and I assume, and you have already come up with some. But I think by looking at that, we will know more.
Maybe this is an ignorant question, but I know that when we were looking at potential auditing firms for the police department, that there was like an RFI and then like a selection process, and all of that was the same. Did the same thing happen for this firm, or because it's
It
for-
did.
It did, but we were heavily involved in the Hillard Hines search, and we just were not involved.
That's right. We didn't know about it until it was done.
So they've already,
Till last week, yes.
So this process was happening this whole time, and
We didn't know.
do you know who was on the committee that selected?
I do. I mean, I should. And it's, I think, let me see.
So my concern, and I'm sorry, it's related to this. When I looked at the website for this company and the places that they've placed people and where they are based, and that seems to be their region, it's the South. Mostly with an occasional small town in California, an occasional small town in Oregon. But it's almost all Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas. I was just surprised.
Yeah, like who was on the selection board?
Yeah.
Like who?
I think Kennedy, Slay, Margaret, and Sherry Sell were on this committee to select the SGR out of a number of applicants.
Those are mostly attorneys, right?
I understand.
Like, so there was no outside? Because I understand that, like, when the interview process for the auditing firm went on, there were members in the HRC and also community members, right? Because, like,
Right.
the city wanted,
It was
like,
done
community
differently.
buy-in.
Right.
But, like, the police chief isn't as important as the auditing firm of the police?
This isn't an auditing firm, it's a
No,
search. Yes.
that's what I'm saying. But,
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. I don't understand this, but obviously they'd spent quite a bit of time on this. I think Tom Crawford might have been on this too. As far as I can tell, it's a done deal, and that's,
It's a
So-
done deal for the search firm.
well, I think the contract is signed, yes.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm saying outside of that, what other resources are they utilizing to solicit applicants for the police chief, if any?
I do not think they are doing anything else. I think they're
And so
really
the
leaving
next
this in the hands of the
question is,
search.
why not?
Okay.
Can you contact Robin Wilkerson as a
I'm
member of
happy to
the
do that.
Human Rights Commission and
Absolutely,
ask, right?
absolutely. Because I think, well, we know what we've gotten in the past, and I'm not opposed to anyone, I'm not speaking to any individual, but I know what I've done successfully for years in recruiting. And when you limit yourself, you get what you get. There's an expression that says, if you always do what you've always done, and you always get what you've always gotten. And I'm not content to stand idly by and allow this pattern to continue. I'd at least like to explore other options.
This is going to be a hard one to fill.
Be
Police
that
are
as it
hard to
may.
fill now.
Then I don't think
Every-
one search
every
firm, be as good as
municipality-
they are,
Right,
is
so-
sufficient.
So I agree with you. I think it's really going to be hard to fill. And given 3% unemployment, anyway, police are leaving the field in droves. Every municipality has vacancies, so it's a problem. So I think you're right, and let's talk, but why don't you go and talk to them, or me, or what, us or
Happy to do
something.
it.
Because I am concerned. And we did not have a good outcome last time, I think.
No, which
So-
is probably why we're where we are now.
Okay, well, okay, I think that's,
You asked which four of us would like to be involved in that 10 to 10:45?
yes,
I would not like to, but I should.
you should.
So I'm putting my name forward now.
Okay, thank you.
I put it on my calendar, but happy to step back if somebody else is really motivated to be there from 10 to 10:45.
I'd actually love to have you there.
I realize I'm
And you
not a
could
commissioner,
come,
but
you
I
could
can
come
be there.
anyway, you're
You
not a
are. Yes,
commissioner, so you're
right.
not dealing with the, so please come.
Right.
Okay,
If, I'm happy to be the fourth unless somebody else wants to.
good. Okay, so we have 4, and Jordan, and me. I'm one of the 4. Okay. I do not think the questionnaire is up yet. When it is, I'll let you know. There's supposed to be a website up. I didn't see it either, and I asked Robin's recruiting supervisor, and she hasn't gotten back to me on it. Let's talk about complaints. Do we have any time? Yes, we have about 10 minutes. Complaint procedures.
Well,
Should
I and Corinne and Pam and Leslie put together this little brief procedural manual on to kind of standardize how we handle complaints that come into the Human Rights Commission about discrimination. And so I don't know if you've had a chance to read it. If you have any comments, it's a work in progress. We can change it. If we get a staff member, it will change because we'll have to, right now we're doing everything and we haven't been doing everything, but hopefully we will have somebody to help with some of it.
Right. We've been taking complaints since about 2015, and at first, they were coming in sort of slowly, and we were doing trial and error, and, but as we've gone up, I think this is our third or fourth iteration about complaint procedures, and we're getting, you know, we're getting more standardized, we're getting forms to respond to people. We're putting ourselves to tighter deadlines, and Linda and Corrine and Pam have been doing a great job writing the procedures down so that we have it documented. Did you hear, by the way, you asked Margaret about it?
No, she hasn't.
Yeah,
She's usually very
I think
responsive. I think she's very busy
I think she's
right
very
now.
busy,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's okay. I didn't give her much time.
So this is something that, has everybody read it? Is there anybody who hasn't read it? The complaint procedure? Are you finding anything about it that you question? Or, because remember, the four of us are, actually the four was including David. Now, I guess I'm the four now, but any one of you might be brought in if you have some special, you'd make a good person on a team that would handle a complaint. So you really do want to know about it, even though you haven't been following, you haven't been handling the complaints.
Well, and also, it won't always be the four of us. I mean,
That's
you
right.
know, any one of us could step up at any point. I think it has to be less than a quorum so that we can communicate with each other without violating the Open Meetings Act. But if anybody else is interested in dealing with these complaints, speak up.
I will try to help next year.
Okay,
I start with that case.
yes, yeah,
He
didn't
never
call
called
back.
me back, you
Yes,
know, I called
right.
him 2-3 times.
Thank you.
Maybe he left the country or something. you
Yeah,
know.
or changed his mind, yeah,
Yeah, people
I'll
do.
be more than happy to help
okay,
Good.
coming year, you know.
great.
But it's important that everybody know what our procedures are and understand them. So, can you give feedback in writing, at least, so that we can, do you need
Yeah,
feedback?
we'll use them as they are unless Margaret says otherwise, and unless
Okay.
you have any comments, in which case we'll just,
So we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting.
I don't know if we need to, really.
Not if Margaret doesn't
If
have
nobody
anything to
has
say. Yeah.
any changes, then we can, and Margaret doesn't, then we can just,
I wouldn't include names of staff members. Like it has Sarah Higgins. I mean, I don't know. Do we need to?
she's just
Instead of
always been the
titles?
one.
I know.
I don't even know what her title is. What is she? Says,
It has
Yeah.
changed, it's
That's
something
right.
strange,
It's always
actually,
just
it's,
been
you don't even
Sarah,
want the
so I don't
title,
know.
because
Yeah,
it
we
doesn't
can-
have anything to do with complaints.
right, well, sure, I can change that.
Yeah.
I'll find out who, what her title is.
Yeah, or
that's fine.
address, or room number.
reflects her enhanced responsibilities, but.
That's okay, I can email her.
Okay, well, if that's the case, and we're done with complaints, I think we can consider adjourning, or commissioner communications, if there are any.
Just an FYI, there aren't any additional new complaints, either via the email or.
There are not?
There are not,
Oh, good.
or via the phone.
But we have a couple.
This has been a heavy year.
We have a few outstanding, though.
Just for the commissioner's information, once or twice a year, I'm asked to speak on gun control. And tomorrow, there's going to be a gun control meeting. I'm not asked to speak, but I will be there. And I probably, if there is a way to announce that I am a human rights commissioner, I will do that.
Good.
As I did at the sanctuary meeting that was held about a month ago. As I would guess most of you know, my congregation, I'm a Quaker, has a person living in sanctuary. And I was at the meeting to discuss that, the public meeting, and I simply said that when they asked for only one person to speak who was representing a certain group, I said I'm a human rights commissioner, and we just moved to the next person. At no time do I ever try to speak for the Human Rights Commission, as I at no time try to speak for my wife or my children. I only speak for Dwight, so.
But I appreciate that you make us look good being here. And I probably would value what you have to say. But that's important, that we don't speak for one another or for the whole group. So where is the gun control meeting? Just, is it an open meeting?
Yeah. ICPJ is sponsoring it, and it's at First Congregational Church on Williams.
Okay. And what time?
7.
Just in case. Okay. Okay. And remember, if you want to, you can come to the Good Shepherd Church at 5:30?
I just sent that to Jordan, so
Okay.
I'll confirm the time.
I think it's 5:30. And they're talking about influencers and getting, encouraging people to apply for the policing commission,
Yeah, 5:30 to 7.
5:30 to 7. Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, folks.